Hello, everybody. So today I am so blessed to have with me Ron Hess from Momentous Insurance. They're one of the world leading insurance company for entertainment. And I don't know if you know about insurance for production or film or television or even stage. And for those of you who are out there that are artists, that are musicians and you tour, you need insurance for that too. So we are going to talk to the awesome, fabulous Ron Hess.
That's me.
Welcome to Sense Mamita.
I'm glad to be here.
One of the things that I love to share with the audience is stuff about the business that requires common sense. Because a lot of times people are doing stuff and they have no common sense.
We see that a lot.
We were talking about this earlier. A lot of times with technology the way it is today, you can pick up your phone, you can pick up your tablet, you can even pick up your computer and start making a little film.
Correct.
So that's great that we have that ability to make a project, but what are the cons about doing it and not having insurance?
Well, in many cases, if you are going to be vetting a production, you're going to have insurance. Even if you just had to get a permit, even if you had to get something done, you're contractually going to be obligated to have insurance just to get the permits to film. But let's say you're doing something at small, home, whatever.
That's right.
The liability involved that can still come up with a production is still paramount to having a successful production. You know, there are things involved that you might do outside of your own properties, outside of your controlled situations, that could end up in a loss that is then much more expensive than you ever considered in the budget that you might have had to do a small little film. If you're doing something at home in your bathroom, you're doing something for YouTube, obviously you're probably not going to need insurance. But what if it became big? What if it became a larger consideration? What if you then have staff that help you? What if it does get picked up by, say, YouTube? Now you have advertisers that are paying attention to that. Now you're going to be looking at something where people are going to be watching what you're doing, and now you're under the scrutiny of the public eye. Then that's where, in a litigious society, people are going to say, I want to go after that person because they used my likeness without my permission. Or I tripped over that person's cord while they were filming. I know who they are now. I'm going to sue them because I hurt my ankle. Now that's where insurance comes into play. How big of your production and how much it gets out there is always going to be in the public eye of someone who may want to come after you, especially if you're successful. People don't sue non-successful people. There's no money there. But once you become successful, there's money there to be had.
Okay, so let's say I want to do a web series and I have 2 locations. I'm going to shoot in my home and I am going to shoot in the park. What kind of insurance would I need for that?
Now at your home, you're probably not too much worried about it, especially if it's something small and you don't have staff and you're not doing anything large as far as the production goes. But once you're filming in the park, you're in a public space, you need liability. Not only because the park's going to make you have insurance, and more than likely you should have gotten a permit to film there. If you go to get that permit, the permit departments are going to require you to have the very basics of 1 million liability insurance. Usually it's 2 million aggregate, 1 million occurrence. And that's for damage you might do to the property while you're filming there, and or someone that might be affected by you filming. Someone trips over your cord, someone trips over something you have there as far as your setup, your camera boom falls on somebody. Depending on how large your production is, now if you're just filming something small, you're still going to have it require insurance. But what if you've got an equipment truck, a cube truck? What if you're out there with numerous people? Now you're talking about workers' comp, just like any business. Whether you're running a 7-Eleven corner store or liquor store, or you're doing a film, you need workers' comp if you have staff. It's required. That's the law.
Okay, so I just have a camera. I think I want to make a web series. I don't have a script yet, but I think I want to get my friends and we're going to shoot something. I don't really have a budget, but I want to go shoot in that park.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching this video right now and I'm going, okay, well, I want to do that. What would the minimum cost be for me if I don't have a big budget? I probably if I have $200, that's a lot of money. Why should I have insurance, especially since I don't have a script? I'm just shooting kind of like what they do on YouTube, but I want to get some location shots.
Yeah, it's because of the location shots. Particularly, you could get away with it if on your own properties, you're on private properties, you're private property of friends, and you're not doing anything extravagant. If you don't have any big plans to have some type of combat scene or stage fighting or anything that you're doing with effects, or you're not renting vehicles. Second, you rent vehicles, the rental company is going to require you to have insurance for non-owned auto physical damage. The second you rent a camera, if you were renting a camera, let's say you're not using your iPhone, you're using some camera, it's a digital type camera, the rental company is going to make you have a property coverage, to cover the value of that camera while you're renting it. But as you were saying, let's say you're going to go film in a location, it's very low budget, it is dialogue only, there's no elements that are extravagant, you're using your iPhone. The very minimum would be general liability.
And what would that cost me?
For a small budget, as you were describing, you can get a general liability policy for a one-day shoot anywhere from $300 to $400. Now, most people think, oh my gosh, that's way beyond my budget, especially as you mentioned, their budget might only be $200. But it's worth it. Do things right. Don't do it wrong. Do things right, and you won't suffer in the long run. One of the things that you see about people and young actors or young film producers, they often go without health or medical. But one little injury could make you go bankrupt, could make you destitute because costs are expensive. It's the same thing here. You start filming and you do something that causes damage to public property, now your little budget of $200 turned into $10,000 because you're responsible for that damage, you're responsible for that loss. They're now coming after you for tens of thousands of dollars. Plus they add on, emotional stress, because we are a litigious society. Now your $200 budget for not buying $300 insurance turned into a $10,000 deficit. Now you're upside down because it's solely on you. And in many cases, if you're doing something like that, your homeowner's coverage or your renter's coverage, or whatever coverage you might have in that regard, is not going to cover you because that's a business venture. So let's say you have your own home, or you have a renter's liability, or you have some type of liability in that regard. It's not going to cover for you for film production because you're looking at it from a business venture. Now, if you're doing something informal, which YouTube blogging allows you to have, maybe it's not as big a deal. But once you step into a public space, once you're in a public sector, you now have a risk of someone coming after you and saying, hey, you now owe me because I tripped over your film cord. Let alone the fact that authorities or the city or whoever owns that property is going to require you to have insurance anyways.
So let's say I'm a filmmaker, newly out of school. I want to make a project. Maybe I have 4 people, part of my crew, and I'll get a few actors. I think maybe I want to do a film every 3 to 4 months. So within a year, I'm doing either 3 or 4 films, short films. And I'm kind of owning the information of having insurance. Would I get insurance for a whole year? Would I get it just when I'm doing each individual project?
You could do it in both ways, actually. When you're talking about 2 or 3 productions, or 3 or 4 low-budget productions, sure, it might be cheaper to buy short-term insurance each time. Now, the workers' comp policy has to be in effect for at least 90 days. That's a state requirement. So you might be able to fit that into a short frame of filming, where then you buy a short-term general liability policy and workers' comp, where then you can fit those into a policy term that you have. And it may be cheaper to buy 2 or 3 short-term production policies for insurance. But you start getting to 4 or 5 or 6, you might be better off having an annual policy, because then the overall minimum premium for having an annual policy is going to be cheaper than all those individual purchases of short-term insurance.
And within that annual policy, that covers workman's comp as well?
Yeah.
Is it all one, like I pay one price for everything?
Now, typically there's 3 parts that you're going to need on a low-budget production.
Okay.
It's going to be general liability insurance, and that is damage to others, slips and falls, third party. That covers property damage. bodily injury to others, but it's not going to cover the people that work for you. That's where the workers' comp comes in. And as you mentioned, having 4 or 5 staff, now by law you have to have workers' comp. You can't just kind of call them independent contractors. It doesn't work in that way. If someone works on a film set, you might want to call them independent contractors, but you tell them where to go, what to do, and when to do it. That makes them an employee by California law. And under labor laws, you have to provide workers' comp. So the very minimum you're going to see right there is general liability and workers' comp. Now the city's going to mandate that you have these if you go to get a film permit. You're in bed to have these anyways. If you rent a vehicle or anything to do with vehicles, or if you're using vehicles, your personal auto coverage may not cover you if you're doing something in a business venture of this type. If it came out in a claim description that, oh, I was using my car to, to work my film, LLC, ABC LLC Productions, they're going to say, sorry, you're not covered for business use. Now you have non-owned auto for your employees, going to pick up film cameras or renting equipment. So now you have non-owned auto. Those are the 3 very basic things that you're going to have if you're not renting equipment. Now, if you're renting equipment, you're going to have some type of inland marine policy or production package. And what that does is it's a property type coverage for renting equipment. So the bigger your production is going to get, the bigger your budget's going to get, the more involved you are with filming, the more insurance you're going to have. And those are the 4 basic things.
And does that come under one policy, or are we talking 4 different?
Those are 4 different types of policies.
Okay.
General liability, non-owned auto for like rental vehicles, workers' comp, and some type of production package or equipment rental type policy. You could, in theory, if you owned your own equipment, you don't need that last one. If you don't have employees, you are a blogger or vlogger who is only using your iPhone to film yourself in the park, you don't need that. But if you're filming in the park, you should have liability. And liability is the first and foremost and paramount of any coverage you should have. In order to get workers' comp, you're going to have general liability because nobody writes what's called a monoline workers' comp policy for what you're doing. So you can't get a standalone workers' comp policy. They would require you to have general liability. So those are the 2 minimum that you have to have if you had any employees, general liability and workers' comp. Obviously, it's a case-by-case situation, what your production is all about.
Right.
And as I said before, if you're using an iPhone to do video blogs on YouTube or Hulu in your bathroom, you probably don't need any insurance at all.
And that is all the time we have for you today. Until next time, #Make Sense Common. And remember, subscribe, share, like, and follow to everything Common Sense Mamita.